Hello, 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 and welcome. We're so glad that you are here, that you're being part of the Rebel Matriarch Summit. Thank you for stopping by for our talk. We are some child-free women who are having a conversation today about what it means to be a Rebel Matriarch who doesn't have children of her own. So my name is Moira Michelle, and here we also have a few other ladies.
Yeah, so my name's Emma Shields, and I'm a somatic therapist, soul guide, and currently in Australia, road tripping through the coast of Victoria and New South Wales. And we also have,
I'm Michelle. I am Australian. Currently, I'm in the UK, and I lead the Aspire series, which is a platform for women leading change and impact.
Wonderful. And I am a hypnotherapist and a trauma healer. I use a lot of both modern and ancient techniques to help people release their trauma and live better lives. I'm from Ireland originally, and I now live in America. And my contribution to the book, Rebel Ma Healing in the Time of the Feminine Women's Stories of Liberation, my contribution to the book was a chapter called How Palestine Led Me Home to Eru, and talks about that journey over the past year with Palestine and the crossovers with Ireland. Would you like to say your chapter, Emma?
yeah, my chapter was I wrote it down and now I've forgotten it. Love, death, and reclaiming power.
And mine was called An Almanac for the Change-Making Women's Soul, and it was written in the throes of event organisation in the chaos of Bali peak hour traffic. The journey that our missions sometimes take us on.
Wonderful. And yeah, we hope that at home you've had a chance to check out the book, because all the proceeds actually go to the children of Palestine, Syria, Middle Eastern Children's Fund. So welcome. Today we are going to be talking about yeah, the role of child-free women in this new paradigm that we're ushering in of the divine feminine and women's empowerment. So I'll tell you a bit about my personal story about being child-free. So I'm 42 years old, and I didn't always think I was going to, not have children. For me, though, it was a possibility. So growing up in Ireland, we have these huge families, the old Catholic family, and uh, my whole family lived like very close. We all lived within a 30-mile radius. It was very small, very insular, very protected and safe. And if I weren't for some relatives that I had, it was my mother's cousin and her husband. They lived in London. They didn't have children. They would come and visit us. And this was like my only kind of glimpse into an outside world that wasn't just this very local world that I was immersed in the west of Ireland. And they were just very ahead of their times. They were activists. They're in their, I think, 70s now. And so they used to come over. They used to cycle around Ireland. This was very unheard. They used to be vegetarians before that was like very common. So they were really against the grain. They were they just showed a whole different way of being. And so I wouldn't say that it's because of them that I'm child-free, but because of them, I knew that it was a possibility that having children or not having children was a choice. I think without them, I might not have even. I like to play with dolls, and when I would grow up, I would have a real live one. And then my sister. So I have a sister that's 8 years younger than me, and so I remember when she was born, it was like she was my like living doll. I remember just being so excited, like heart bursting excitement. Like, my mother, I was like, get out of the way, she is mine. And I always joke that I use up all my maternal instincts on her. um, and still, I was very close with her to this day. But yeah, over the years, I would, I'd be in certain relationships. I could see myself with a big, huge family, and certain, I was back to thinking about, maybe like no kids. And then I think maybe around my mid 30s or so, or when I was getting into 30s, I thought I have to make a decision, and I really stressed myself out with this need to make a final decision. And then I realized, that I didn't actually need to make this final decision, that I could just make a decision for now, and I could come back and I could just reevaluate that anytime I wanted. And also just that there's so many children in the world that need parents, that I wasn't totally wedded to the idea that I needed to birth a child. So it really just took this pressure off. And then when I met my husband, both of us were like, nah, like not right now, definitely not feeling like we wanted kids, but maybe someday. And then we would check in with each other pretty regularly. Hey, how you feeling about that? Do you want kids? And we were like, nah, not right now. And then during COVID, we were like so glad not to have kids. Everyone's doing the homeschooling thing, and the children were so traumatized and everything. The teenagers, everyone just at home and all that. We were like, we kind of like it like this. Maybe we're not ever going to want to have kids, and that felt right, and it still feels right. But I still am very open to, if I waken up in the morning tomorrow and I say I want a child, and maybe there would be a route to having my own biological child, or that there would be a child looking for a parent, that I can make that decision, that I don't have to be bound by any decisions of the past. And yeah, that's what's really working for me right now when it comes to my outlook in terms of motherhood.
Amazing. Yeah, wonderful. There's a few things in there that I resonate. And maybe I can just like share my story. We might all share our stories and then we can swap notes. So I grew up in a small town, and everyone I knew, that's just what happened. You met someone, you got married, you had kids, and I, for quite a while, had this expectation that I would meet someone and then eventually want to have kids. In my first long-term relationship, he definitely was interested in having kids, and I was like, oh, I don't really want to have kids right now. And I had a lot of like shame around my challenge, like about my fear around it. And the relationship didn't last. I started getting into alternative healing spaces, and eventually and just put the question aside. I really needed to do some healing after that relationship, so I did that. Still having this kind of expectation that at some point it might happen, I might meet someone, might want that. And then I met my last long-term partner, and he really wanted children, and we were together for 6 or 7 years, and it got to a crunch point. I did have to make a decision. Do I really want to have kids? And at that point, for my whole adult life, I'd always had a level of fatigue. It wasn't quite chronic fatigue, but it was always there. I was really, really struggling just to take care of myself, like to get groceries and then put them in the fridge afterwards. There was a huge level of fatigue. And I said to him, I can't even take care of myself, like let alone another small human that would demand even more. And so for a little while there, it was not really a choice, but like a context thing, a circumstance thing. I legitimately thought that I wouldn't be able to take care of another human. And then over time, I did some trauma healing and regained some more energy. And then it became more, I really had to dig in and say, do I want to do this? And I didn't want to. And there was, as I was reflecting, there were, I was thinking about when I was a kid at school, and all my friends would, be planning their weddings and their bridesmaid dresses and the names of their kids. And I was not interested in that. I was more interested in books and learning. And yeah, kids used to cry when I held them. That's not the case anymore. But at that point, it was, oh, well, they don't like me, so I don't think I need to be going there. There was all these little pieces in there that were, I guess, just making me think like this is not for me. And then when I got to this crunch point in this relationship, I had to dig quite deep. And when I went right into like my soul, it's like, what am I here to do? Like, is birthing a child of my own part of my purpose, part of my what my soul wants to create in this life? And the answer was no. So the relationship ended. We're still friends. He met someone, he's got a baby, it's amazing. I went into a really deep healing journey. That's part of where my book chapter comes in, because there was a lot in there for me around death and love, and just like learning how to be more in my heart and what my purpose is, how I want to express my soul and my love in this life. And I've met a beautiful man, and we got married recently, and neither of us want to have kids. So that's, yeah, at this point, I mean, that I'm like similar to you, Moira, I'm open to that changing. I'm open to what I currently feel being different in a few years. But yeah, it feels pretty, I feel pretty solidly like that's where my path is going. And I feel quite comfortable with that. Yeah. Yeah.
My journey, well, I always thought that if there was one thing I was going to do in this lifetime, it would be to have kids. I was that girl. Like I'd be cutting out the kids' outfits from like the Target catalogs when I was like 10 and like sticking them on paper with like the dream house and the dream dress and the whole thing. I was that girl. Um, yeah, I got married very early on, and yeah, I thought that was going to be it, and that I could choose at any point, that I would just decide and it would be done. It would be a done deal. And yeah, I think as time went on, I went to uni, did all the other things, and then went, oh, actually, there's so much more to life, that there's so much more that's possible. And similar to you, Moira, like every year we would go, are we going to have kids? And there was a lot of pressure being in a small town at that point, and we were in a community of people that had kids quite early on. And we were the only ones that didn't. And everyone was kind of like, what are you doing? Why aren't you having kids? And we were really well set up financially and all that kind of stuff. And everyone was kind of like, why aren't you doing this? But every year, it just felt like there were so many other things that I wanted to do. And at some point, I questioned and went, actually, are you the person that I want to do this with? And I started going down the spiritual path and taking more of an individual path of life, I suppose, and questioning what I hadn't done. And the marriage ended. And then it was almost like I did a backflip and went the actually, I literally went the polar opposite way, and then started questioning whether it was actually socially responsible to have kids. And my professional background is child protection and out of home care. So I've spent my entire adult life advocating for kids and for their rights and their needs and their safety. And I know all about kids' routines and structures and blah, 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 and what they need and blah, 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 blah. Probably more than the average human, which is crazy. And then personally, I was like, I'm not sure if this is like there are so many kids that don't already have what they need. So why would I bring more into this dynamic? And personally, I was dancing up a storm. I was bouncing around the world. I was like, this kind of doesn't fit with my life anyway. And it wasn't actually until I had a couple of boyfriends when I was around about 33, 34, and they were the ones that started challenging me and saying, are you going to start growing up and being responsible and start thinking about this stuff? And I was like, well, do I have to? And I was quite defensive around it. And it wasn't until maybe a couple of years after that, when I was about 35, and I started really questioning, like, what comes next? I was doing youth work, and that was tons of fun, but I was like, this isn't my entire future. And I started questioning, like, what came next? And, stepping into business felt like the only right next step, which petrified the crap out of me. But then also I was like, okay, it's time to start thinking about a serious relationship and, do I want kids and all of those questions. And at that point I was like, I want to do all of that. That's all the next picture. But first I want to take off for 6 months, and I want to make sure that I've done everything that I want to do, and then I'll come back and figure all that out. And the problem was that I took off at the start of 2020, and I chose to stay in Bali during the pandemic, and I thought it was going to be 2 months. And it ended up being 2.5 years. And right before I left, I'd seen my doctor, and she said to me, look, we need to start thinking seriously about your fertility. And I was like, yeah, that's fine, whatever, when I get back from overseas. And then it wasn't until a year after I started this ping pong between Bali and Australia, going, am I moving back to Bali? Am I moving back to Australia? Am I staying in Bali? Really didn't know. Am I going to meet a person in Bali? I don't think so. But then what does life look like in Australia? And where on earth do I now fit in Australia? So it wasn't until a year later that I started speaking to my doctor and talking about eggs and freezing and all this kind of stuff. And the last year I've opened my mind up to it. At 39, I started opening my mind up to it and going, okay, how's this whole picture actually going to look? And yeah, it's just been a really weird time because it feels like nothing has really lined up, but also my body feels completely ready to have a child. Like there is a child that wants to come through. And that's been really interesting to navigate, given that during the pandemic, I built this monstrosity of a business that I'm like, how on earth do I do being on my own, potential partnership, kids, and holding this business? So now it's just feels like a whirlpool that I'm like, I actually don't know how to navigate all of that. But yeah, it's that's where my journey's up to. So it's interesting being in this space about choosing to be child free, when it's like sometimes it's not actually a choice. Sometimes it's that's where life has led you, and it's not actually the final outcome either.
Yeah. Right. And that's why it's been so helpful for me to just like keep it as a door that can be open and closed. And but I do think it really helps to be able to when you don't grasp onto the biological aspect of it. Because I personally think it's like, does the world need one more human? You know, when we have so many humans on the planet, period, and then we have so many humans who need parenting. And so once I let go of that, this kind of idea that it would have to be biological, there's no ticking clock anymore. And that's been really great. And I also resonated with what you said, Michelle, about, you know, working in the field and with children. And so I work with trauma, and the majority of that is inflicted as children. And there isn't a single human I've come across yet who hasn't had trauma. And so, you know, I think kids are like the spiritual teachers, right? You know, boundaries, they're going to push them, challenge you every single day. There isn't a path that is as difficult and as relentless as parenthood. And it is, yeah, I just have massive respect for the path, and that's why I've thought so deeply on the topic. And also, they say, you know, that you see, on the spiritual realms, that children create a ton of karma. So, you know, they say a lot of people who come in and don't have children, they're on a path of paying down karma, not creating a whole bunch of other lifetimes worth it. So I think that might be another factor too.
Yeah, something you just said, Moira, about I feel like there's something for me in the sheer amount of work that parenting requires, and what you said as well about trauma. Like, so my work is also supporting people with trauma through therapy, and there's a lot of, like, I find in my work what I'm doing is a lot of parenting. And it's probably similar for you. Like, I'm reparenting people and helping have them have reparative experiences. And so I think if I had, that's part of what my soul calling feels like in this lifetime, is to actually be someone who provides that space for people who need that reparative experience. And I think if I had my own kids, you know, there's always going to be a great deal of resources channeled into raising a family. And without that, I can spread my love across so many people and give them so many beautiful connective experiences, and that just feels like such a gift. I feel really blessed to be able to do that. um, hmm. And there was something else that you said, and I've lost my train of thought. This happens. Actually, I think I've caught it again. So as you can probably tell, I'm neurodivergent. So I have 5,000 things happening in my brain all the time. And that's also part of the challenge, I think, for me. You know, essentially neurodivergence can be a disability in this world because we just don't have the support network in the village that we need. And that's a big part of my partner and I's decision as well, is that between the two of us, we can function. But I don't think that we could without a pretty solid support network, and maybe more than a lot of people, for us to actually raise a family. And I think that I wanted to speak to, disability can be a huge path to a huge burden for people in this society as well. And I'm guessing there's probably a few people out there who have had to make choices about being child free based on their ability. And I can imagine that there would be, for me, it's not been such a huge, like, I feel like I've reconciled that, but I'm just thinking about people out there who might not actually realize that they're neurodivergent or have other disabilities that prevent them from being able to care for another person, and they might have a real desire to do that. So yeah, it's like I want to bring that in and kind of bring those people into the space and say that that's also something to consider. And the reason I say that is because I've also received a lot of questions about, why aren't you having kids? And it can feel really, when everyone asks all the time, it can feel like a really big question that, like, I kind of get sick of answering. Because then if I'm having to reveal my physical health conditions all the time, it can feel invasive. So yeah, just planting that into the space.
It's an interesting thing, the other people's opinions. I have conversations with my parents where they're both like, "Oh, we're not going to be grandparents," and I'm like, "Hang on, I'm feeling that I'm going to be a parent." So, it's like other people assume, they make assumptions. So I find that I'm around a lot of people that assume that if you've reached 40, that you've decided that you don't want to have kids. And then I have other people say, actually, don't worry about it. You've got stacks of time. And I'm like, are you sure about that? Because like there's this whole societal thing that it's like, as a woman, by the time you get to 40, it's like, oh, there you go, done deal. But that's not always the truth as well. But I think there's an interesting point around readiness. And I think a lot of women have kids before they're ready to have kids, and they do so because of societal conditions or pressure from a partner or whatever it is as well. But I think for me, my mum has significant mental health. So for a long time, I was actually quite fearful of being a parent. I was like, what if I end up having what she had? And then how will I be as a parent? So it took a long time to move through that as well. So I think there's something, and maybe that comes into the social responsibility as well as, being ready to be a parent. Like it sometimes doesn't happen on, the societal timelines or the biological timelines as well. I think that's a point too.
I mean, for me as well, it's because myself and my husband, we're in a city where neither of our families are. And so it just wouldn't be ideal in that situation because you can't do this alone. I mean, part of the big lie of how we find ourselves in this situation is that, for centuries it was villages raising children. And then it turned with the industrial revolution and religion and these things, it turned into the nuclear family. And it was never the nuclear family. So mom, dad, and then the children. And this was never meant to be how it was, and it really set the family up for failure. The big joke in therapy is like, oh, let me save you a bunch of money, it's your parents' fault. Where two people can't be everything. They can't be everything to each other, can't be everything to these children. And the village would step in, when mom's having her mental health thing, that the rest of the women will step in and they'll mother. And if the father is, for example, having a hard time and, being violent, the men will step in and be like, hey, dude, kind of back off over here. Come over here. Let us help you out. But now we don't have that. And women are unsupported. I mean, I live in America, and where the system is very anti-women and anti-children. And so part of it is kind of an fu to the system, going, why would I have a child here? Like, what about this government has shown me that you value life? Besides, of course, fighting that you must have the child and I must control your body, so that you have it. But once the child is born, this country shows no regard for that life. And so, yeah, part of that is this a system that deserves like a beautiful little human in it? Or if I were to become a mother, would I just get the next plane to Ireland and have that child grow up in their ancestral homeland of at least half their lineage? So there is that part for me as well.
Mm. Yeah, definitely. I also feel like not having children for me means that I can explore family and connection in different configurations. And that's something that people will say quite often, oh, if you're not going to have a kid, who's going to take care of you when you get old? And I'm like, my family. Because I've built a family. Like, I've got friends who, when I was overseas and my apartment got sold out from under me, they were like, we'll pack it up for you so you can stay over there, like I've built this community of people who share like such a deep love and connection for each other that is like family. It's probably closer than some like blood family members. And I think that that's something that I feel strongly about modeling, is that, interdependence doesn't mean necessarily the nuclear family. It can mean all relationships, and love can look so many different ways.
What you're speaking to there is, right, this nuclear family programming that says only children and parents, have this responsibility, that we don't have it in, the fabrics that go laterally either. And one of my favorite quotes around, motherhood and child-free living is, it's by Liz Gilbert, who I used to love her, but I was really disappointed by her when she stayed silent around Palestine. But I'll quote her nonetheless. She says that a mother's love is like a laser beam, and it needs to be, right. Child just deserves it. Needs so much love and attention. When you don't have your own children, you can be like a floodlight. You can bring this loving light to everyone because you're not so focused on certain humans. And I really love that. I really resonate with that strongly because we have this opportunity, we have this time to be the village for women, whatever that looks like. For some, it's like, hey, let me help you out when you're babysitting. For others, it's like, you're too busy, raising your family and worrying about all of that to notice what's going on in like the political sphere, the economic sphere, the social sphere, these kinds of things, for us to be stepping into matriarchal roles within that.
Interesting point. Like, I birth a lot. I birth a lot, and I birth some big babies. They might look a bit different, but like, I don't know how I would have given the energy that I have given to this thing that I've created if I had kids. I think it would be really, really tricky. And it's something that I'm navigating. It's like, what needs to happen to have the support around that entity, the business enterprise entity, but also the child family entity as well. And how does that look? And then what happens if you do meet a partner in another part of the world? Or, you know, like there are so many different dynamics to it. What happens if that then doesn't work out and you're like, crap, now we've got a kid between two different countries? And like these are things that I think about a lot. And maybe I overthink the whole thing. Maybe I have overthought the whole thing. But I don't know. I don't know. It's such a, it's just, I feel like, I don't know, I just feel like I'm in this pool of all of the things at this point in time. It's such an interesting time to be doing this.
Because it is like, something is happening here on Earth,
Mm,
right? And
mm,
something is being birthed. And it comes back to this question, right, about mothering. Do you have to, birth a child in order to mother it? And even, we talk about the rebel matriarch, who is, of course, the theme of the summit. And who are we? How would you define yourself and your role as the rebel matriarch? Whoever would like to go first.
Mm. Such a big question. I think for me, defining myself as the rebel matriarch without children, it comes back to um, having the level of like vastness in my being, in my soul, in my resources that I can, yeah, as you were saying earlier with that quote, Moira, to spread it, to be the floodlight, to bring that love into the world in places where it maybe wouldn't otherwise come if everyone was focusing like a laser. Um, to me, it also means, yeah, modeling interdependence, because I think where the world is going, like we're going to need better relationship skills. We're going to need better conflict skills. And like I've got the resources right now to do, to not only practice and learn in a different context to, because I know that there's conflict in a family, in a nuclear family dynamic, but I'm interested in how do I bridge difference. I'm interested in how do and I have the space for dreaming. I have the space for dreaming and for allowing my creativity to be far reaching and try to bring something really far reaching in that might actually help shape, change, and change, maybe not change the direction, but shape how it looks and make it a little bit better. Yeah. And so what that might look like is I feel like that comes through, like similar to what you were saying, Michelle, in my business. Like I'm still finding my feet and still figuring out my way with that, but that feels like the conduit for it. It's like whatever I offer is going to come through with so much love, and so much of what I just said, like wanting, like having that desire, having that vision for where humanity can go. That's my channel for it, is the business.
mm.
Yeah.
One of my challenges that I'm a big dreamer. A little bit like you, Emma. I'm a big dreamer and I want to do everything. And there are so many things to do in this lifetime. I want to be everywhere and I want to create, like I want, like if something comes to me, I'm like, oh my gosh, I want to do that. And I want to be able to say, yes, I can do that. And so the bit that I struggle with around mothering is how does that then change? Because inevitably it changes, right? Like you have other responsibilities. Um, so and I guess part of that is like having a partnership where there's a lot of flexibility and opportunity allowed inside that as well, which is quite unique to find. Um, and then, yeah, I mean, what is my role as currently as a child-free matriarch? Well, I mean, I have this entity which has women flying all over the world to go to things that I create and summits and books and impact trips and all of this stuff, which is just absurd. And sometimes it feels like living in a fantasy land and just going, I'm going to create this thing. And then people go, we'll come to that. And I go, what? What do you mean? And like it's almost like sometimes I'm still spinning in that that's the reality that has concocted itself in the last few years. Because like I guess living in Bali, like you do live, it is literally like living on fantasy islands sometimes, and you can do whatever you want. And then I would fly back to Australia and go, oh crap, that's right. There's a cost of living crisis and the mortgage rates are going up next week and all of that kind of stuff. It's like, oh crap, how do I fit back into this reality? Where it's more likely that the family and the kids and all that stuff is going to come through. But then how do I still hold that other entity that has become, I suppose, what I'm known for and what my belief in the world is that, you know, we should be able to believe in magic and we should be able to be in spaces where magic happen. Then how does that happen when you're waking up at 4 a.m. to deal with a crying kid and then you don't know how to pay the mortgage next week and all that kind of stuff? Like, I'm not sure how all of that goes together yet. So I mean, back to the question, the childfree matriarch is just like a carefree creating magic, channeling, constructing, holding vessel that just kind of moves and flows and kind of just can because there aren't other bits in the way. Does that answer that?
As you were speaking, you know, you're talking about that, you know, the exhaustion of motherhood, right? And you know, that's to say as well that you know, I feel like, you know, I always thought if I were to get pregnant, you know, and, you know, the times I was with the right guy or whatever, you know, I would just have this kid and it would be great. You know, it would be the most amazing thing that would happen in my life and it would be fine, just not how I want to spend my energy. And so, you know, now, like, what's coming to me in this moment is like, you know, the power, like, of a mother, you know, the lioness, you know, that, like, fierce, just absolutely ferocious power of protection that is a mother's love. And I just feel like the patriarchy has torn women asunder so much that this that this power has been weakened, and that which is really sad. You know, we all here work with trauma, right? So we all, so many women and men come, you know, unmothered, right? Their mother wasn't well enough for them to have felt mothered properly. And I think that we need to stand with, for, around whatever is required around the mother so that the next generations don't have to go through this. Because I mean, you just look around and everyone is so hurting. And so I you know, I don't want to paint a picture of like powerless mothers running around. They're so powerful, but so freaking busy, so freaking overworked, so exhausted, so forgetting their power. You know, so you know, on the patriarchal program, so duped into forgetting so much of their power. And you know, whatever we can do to be that power, um, whether it means, you know, just, you know, being those, you know, those walls of the temple or those, you know, pillars within the community that have, you know, a little more capacity in whatever way possible, is to bring back and have us remember the power of the mother. You know, just as Earth has been, you know, our great Mother Earth has been treated, right? We have to remother her until she remembers herself, and so I think we're our job is to mother the world and our communities and bring those you know, literal birth mothers, just help them back into their power. Because yeah, the next generation, everyone needs them, but the next generation want to really meet them.
Mm. just taking that in. It's just really beautiful what we've all just shared. Mm. Hmm.
So I guess the question comes around to, who do you hope is listening right now? And maybe that they're listening to us and they're feeling inspired. And what are they feeling inspired about?
Hmm. Yeah, for me, I feel like I hope that if there's any women or vulva owning bodies who are listening and are kind of sitting in that question of, what do I do here? You know, if there is a question for those people about, do I want to, or do I have a choice about this? I would just hope that they feel like, what I would want to say to them is that just to remove the pressure, just to like create literal embodied space and around their core, and to just, yeah, like really connect deeply inwards, and also trust that life will meet whatever it is that they actually want. Like, life meets us, and if that's part of our path, then, and that's something that people want, then that will meet them. They will find it. And if that's not, then depending on how people feel about it, there's can be a bit of a process, but also just to trust, just really to trust life and trust themselves and trust the next right step. Yeah.
I want people to understand there are many reasons why people choose to not have kids, and sometimes it's not even choice. Sometimes it's just the way that life goes. And yeah, I don't know. I've got a dog barking, so I'm kind of being thrown off a little. um, yeah, sorry.
Part of mothering.
Yeah,
Yeah.
mothering lots of at the moment. I've been doing lots of house sitting. Um, yeah, so yeah, I think just knowing that there are many, it's a complex conversation. Like, there are so many different types. For some women, it's super straightforward, and they're just like, kids, never having them, don't care. A lot of women, it's quite a sensitive topic, and there are many different sides to it, and many different components as well. And it's usually it's an open conversation that women are happy to have. Like, there's nothing taboo about it. I know part of the thing around this topic is it's a taboo topic. I don't feel that it's a taboo topic. I think it's more it's approached, and like any conversation topic, right? And is it like, oh, why don't you have kids? Or is it, hey, what's your perspective around this stuff? How's this playing out for you? In which case it's a really fruitful and sometimes a really helpful conversation for both sides as well. So I think a society that is just more open to, there are many different sides to the conversation around, are you having kids or are you not having kids? I think that's what I would like people to take away.
Yeah, for me, I guess if there are any younger women listening, I hope that they'll just from the conversation just know that it's an option, and that you can live a really fulfilled life without having children of your own. You get to be a great auntie and all those things, and yeah, that this role of motherhood is not all about through the initiation of childbirth, and finding your own path to mothering in the world is sort of your work to do. And to people who are out there mothering, just I have so much respect, and the child-free community, again, not a monolith, but we're not all like sitting around drinking martinis and laughing. Um, we have so much respect for you. It is the most difficult path in life. It is the most important job in life. So please don't ever think that we are, imagining something or telling stories. Nothing like that. We just have absolute respect for your path, and trying to forge a better world, um, for you and your children, because your children are our future. So, any last closing remarks, ladies, before we'll close out? I do want you to mention. I'd love it if your website or social media, or where if people wanted to follow up with you, where they could.
Just that I've really enjoyed having the conversation today, and I hope that it's helped other people listening. My website's emmashields.com, and my Instagram is at @EmmyLushi. And yeah, I'm at the moment just creating. There's some kind of body of work coming out, so I don't actually know how to describe it, but there's something around archetypal embodiment, somatic archetypal embodiment coming out of my space very soon. So if people are interested in that, they can check it out.
And of course, there's no greater archetype than the great mother.
For me, I'm at www.theaspireseries.com, or on Instagram as theaspireseries.com, or Michelle Gardiner AU, and Facebook too. In terms of what I have coming up, I have 2 books launching in 3 weeks' time, which I just finished 5 days ago. And we're launching in London. And then I've also got a summit in June next year, Women's Leadership Change and Impact Summit, and then also an impact trip to Africa in March. So that's enough for now. And enough birthing.
That is plenty, Michelle. So for me, it's moyramichelle.com is my website. So you can find information about my services on there. And then on social media, I do Instagram, and then it's at Moyra Michelle, and that's Moyra Michelle. And I actually like to live a pretty local, sort of small, slower life. So I take a lot of pride in dilly-dallying as much as I can, and trying to just embody the slower pace that is the antithesis to capitalism. So please feel free, if you're listening, to reach out, and we'd love to connect with any of you. All right.
Is that us done?
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye. Thanks for watching.